Podcast, a weekly live show where we explore the power of culture and leadership in business. I'm Ryan McCarty.
And I'm George Rogers, and we go live every week to learn from each other and hear from other experts about how to effectively champion our team members and ourselves. So join us live every Wednesday on our social networks or subscribe. You can listen to Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Now, let's champion your culture.
Morning, George.
Good morning.
There's always that blackout right between. I'm always like, is the camera going to work or not?
Yeah, it's technology. You can never live without it nowadays.
Yeah.
But you kind of need it. So
yeah,
it's important.
It works that way.
It works. We were
talking about, speaking of getting older.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a horrible segment. But anyway, you've lost your glasses.
I didn't lose them. Let's be clear.
You've misplacing.
I don't know where they are. As you get older,
you just misplace your brain.
I become everything I made fun of my mom and grandma.
Right?
Like, how do you lose your keys? It jiggles, like it makes noise. How do you lose your phone?
Yeah.
Like, I lose my phone all the time, but thankfully I have the watch. I can be like, let's see where it is, and I can bing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't do that with glasses now. When I had my retail stores back in the days, we used to sell these little gadgets where you can put on your key ring, and it was an app and be able to find things.
Yeah.
I need that for my glasses. I got a few pair of glasses.
just have it on the side of your
loop
glasses.
It on there. As soon as I take it off, I just clamp it. Okay. Wherever I place it, it has to be habit.
All right. The worst thing I've done as I've gotten older, in terms of getting older and feel like I'm losing my brain half the time, is I have turned on my camera, or turned on my phone flashlight to look under the bed for my phone.
That's interesting. That's interesting. That's like the mom looking for the child that she's holding, freaking out.
Oh yeah, you saw that. Oh yeah.
So,
She's been like rocking the chair, holding the baby, and then she looks down at the chair, and the baby's not there.
Gone. Baby escaped into the hands, trying to get some milk.
Just gone.
Crazy. Come on, man.
Anyway, hey, thank you for joining us on Champion Culture, the podcast. George and I love being able to join with you every Wednesday live. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Not always cool, because sometimes the camera doesn't work. Back to your point, the technology.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think what matters is people understand our hearts.
Yeah, right.
At least that's what I tell myself. When something doesn't go right, last week I'm going live
because we
from
care.
Florida. I go live from Florida.
Yeah.
And we thought we had an issue on my end. It was actually on your end.
Right.
And then I created an issue on my end, but I don't think anybody ever caught it. But the show goes on, and we're here for you, everybody that's watching and listening to us right now. Whether you're watching us live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram,
reach out, say something, comment.
If you're listening to us on your platform for your podcast, we appreciate you listening to us each and every week, as Ryan said, live with each other, with the brothers, and you should invite your mother.
Yeah.
Sister,
your in-laws, your outlaws, your
bylaws.
All of them.
Yeah, just invite all the laws.
Yeah.
We really enjoy everybody out there. Shout out to all our LinkedIn family and network team out there that watches us live. I know a lot of them are joining in.
It's a lot of fun.
So we appreciate everybody joining in. When you join in, if you are watching live, let us know where you're checking in from. We like to give out shout outs, and or if you got a question, anything cultural leadership, D&I,
throw it in there.
HR related, Ryan and I, we may not know it all, but we know somebody who does.
Yeah.
And we'll
who's that?
the solutions.
This guy?
We know somebody that knows somebody.
We'll find an expert.
We'll find an expert.
I see.
We got great friends out there. Alice and Ben. We got Ben. We got we got Melanie. We got Shannon. We got Edgar. We got people out there that know some stuff.
Yeah.
So we can reach out.
Yeah.
We don't know everything, and that's to our delight. At least I don't know how you feel, but I am grateful. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Because I can barely handle the people that think I know something.
Right.
And the people that think that I am something.
Yeah. It's like when I used to be a janitor in a church.
Oh yeah.
A big church in Indianapolis.
Yep.
Lakeview Temple.
Yep.
Anybody familiar with that? And it had a huge school. So I was a janitor at the school. And one thing as a janitor, you don't want to show people that you have all the keys.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the more keys you have, the more responsibility you got. So it's like, you got to be like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how I'm getting there.
Yeah.
And you got, you know, because this is a funny conversation, but really, like, who gets more work?
Yeah.
The one who does good work.
Yeah. Yep. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago on one of our podcasts, like being afraid to really show your gifts and talents because you don't want them to be used and or abused and then taken for granted as well.
No, that is true, because when you think about it, like, you're hired for a specific role.
Yeah.
And then you're told to bring your full self in, but then the benefit of the workplace is they get your full self, but they hired you at half the price.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yep. Shout out to Matthew. We got some people in the chat already, but shout out to Matthew.
Yeah.
He said he loses his glasses all the time. And so he'll have them in his pocket or they'll slide, down into the opening of the shirt.
Yeah.
But the key thing that everybody should learn, like, if there's a key a thought for today, I think Matthew's ahead right now with the quote of the day, and that is, getting old requires patience.
Getting
You just gotta be patient.
Yeah,
patient when you drive, patient how you walk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, last month I pulled a muscle in my back, putting pancake mix back into the pantry. Like, you gotta be patient. Like
that was your workout.
Like, I picked the bag up.
Your workout was picking up a pancake bag.
I went too fast.
I just need to stop and make note of that.
Yeah, 10 pounds.
Your workout that day was a pancake bag. That's all I'm saying.
So shout out to everybody. We got people joining us from all over. Hey, being old requires patience. You can't move like you used to move.
That's a very good point.
Sometimes you can't talk like you used to talk.
No,
you got to think about what you're about to say.
You can't even stand up the way you used to stand up. Yesterday, I stood up, and I stood up too fast.
Oh, wow.
And you know how you stood up too fast? Because you get high.
Yeah.
It's like I felt like I was going to pass out, man. I felt like I stood up fast enough where all the blood rushed past my neck down into my chest, and I had nothing in my head.
That's not good.
No, man. No. So,
good. Not good at all. So, shout out to everybody that's joining us. We appreciate everybody joining us. All the way from South Carolina. We got some Georgia.
Nice.
Coming Georgia. Shout out to Georgia. I was down there. I used to live in Alpharetta, Georgia. Matthew, so it was a great time. I used to live down in there for a few years in Alpharetta, have some stores.
Love
Atlanta,
Bill,
Sandy Springs.
Atlanta's great.
North Atlanta is very beautiful.
Love
a little bit more peaceful.
Yeah.
Still, traffic is chaotic. It's just Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like the restaurant that gets notarized.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and then they have to close down like 6 months later because there's too many customers. It's like when you find a good city, it's going to have many times bad traffic. And that's not because of the city, it's because we're addicted to cars. That's a whole nother soapbox, but it is a thing. It's like, if there's a lot of traffic, like you think about LA, you think about Atlanta, the population, people go where it's chill, man.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, man. I used to go to a conference, I forget, it was like a leadership conference in North Atlanta. And it was at the Gwinnett Center. You know where Gwinnett is? All that area? It's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Good stuff.
Anyway,
good stuff.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody in Atlanta.
Shout out to the Georgia. See, everything's a song.
Georgia.
We got to get back to the show. So we are continuing this talk. We spent a lot of time the last couple of weeks really devouring and digging into all things leadership.
Yeah.
Types of leadership, value-based leadership last week.
Yeah.
Right. The good, the bad, and the ugly of leadership, being authentic. Today, we're getting into this conversation of empathy. And as we talk about empathy, I remember about 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, I ran into this guy named Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Gary Vaynerchuk. He's, Gary V. He's created a good wine business for his father, went on, and he's very successful in marketing. He's a marketing guru. He just knows what to do. He knows how to invest, what to invest in. And he slowly became this very, speaking, he's very focused on.
He was a thought leader.
Yeah.
Beyond just like a marketing mind. Yeah. Which he's really good at.
Yeah.
I mean, that does help, right?
He's good at business.
Well, yeah.
But
he's good at storytelling.
He's learned how to connect with people.
Yeah.
And he's gone on this he's very strong now on empathy.
Yeah.
It's something that you and I have carried, not
Right.
bragging or boasting, but this
Right.
is a lifestyle that we've lived and experienced. I would say mine comes from where my experiences, and I think some of that is true for you as well.
Yeah.
Through what really impacted us from our leaders, and also what really impacted us from the leaders that were not what we are today.
Well, sure.
Right? So we learn from both, but the importance of empathy. I get into this mindset, and I'm opening this up with this thought because I know there's a few people,
Yeah.
that says the quote, "This generation and this world has become so soft."
Yeah.
Where empathy,
yeah.
like we wanted to get the job done. We knew what our job was. We woke up before the sunrise, and nobody's made from my cloth.
Right.
That generation,
right.
Where we're just not made from the same cloth.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad sometimes we're not.
Yeah.
I like a little bit of finer things now. I like a little satin.
Yeah.
I like a little cotton and wool. I like a lot of different material. So whatever that cloth is, I'm glad that I have variety now.
Right.
But what does it mean, Ryan, as we get into this conversation, understanding that there's this stronghold of empathy, you're too soft nowadays, versus the reality of what it takes to really lead the generation that we're leading, but also just leading people in general.
Yeah. And leadership and how we lead is a personal choice.
Yeah.
Right. And the outcomes that we want to, and the goals that we have set for ourselves, many times determines the type of decision making, the type of leadership. I know last week we talked about how leadership isn't a style, that it's not something that you can put on like a silk shirt or like a cotton jacket, right? Like leadership is a way of life. It's really who you are. Right. Not so much what you do or even the authority that you have. And so leadership is setting the example. In a very basic sense, it's leading. You can't spell leadership without lead. So who's taking the lead? Who's setting the example? And in that example, what we have to understand is that we have to determine what type of leader we choose to be, right? And we talk about all the time that every leader manages, but not every manager leads. And sometimes we think about leadership in terms of the position that we hold, the title, and we've heard that leadership is more than position, more than titles. And I agree with that. And it really is relational connection that we have with people. And leadership comes out of that. And so empathy is not, to me, a type of leader. Empathy is the ground that effective leadership comes out of. See, so for me, it's not a matter of am I getting to where my goals are? It's how am I getting to where and who am I along that way? We talk about who am I, and that starts that emotional intelligence and that EQ. Right. The IQ is, your intelligence quotient. For some reason, EQ is emotional intelligence, EQ. Yeah, right. But that emotional intelligence and that self-awareness, and it begins with, to your point, a lot of people would say that empathy is one of those soft skills. And I would say, well, if it was a soft skill, it wouldn't be so hard to find it in the workplace. Like, it seems like it's a harder thing for leaders to grapple with feeling with someone, as opposed to feeling for someone. It's easy for people to grab a hold of the idea of sympathy or compassion. Like, I feel for you.
Right.
But I love how Brene Brown, shout out to all of her work and checking out her books and videos on empathy. It's not about feeling for someone. It's about feeling with someone. And so, getting back to that feeling, because when I started the Culture of Good, I heard that, man, that this was the touchy feely stuff. And I'm like, it turns out we're human.
Yeah.
This is a way to rehumanize what we do and find a new way. This, and it's not a new way of leading. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
This is the way of every great leader that we can find. And again, not just people with authority, but great leaders that built great movements that not only accomplished great things, but also made the lives of those that went with them better.
Yeah.
they were empathetic leaders, man.
Mm.
They felt with people.
Yeah.
They didn't feel for them.
Yeah, when I think of empathy, I think of it as and this is where music pops in my head,
Yeah.
right? I'm always having music playing in my head. I think it's that sacred dance between I understand Ryan, right? And I also accept who Ryan is, and where he is. And so my heart says, I care.
There's an understanding.
There's an understanding there that goes beyond just, hey, this is a job, but I understand Ryan, right? But part of me understanding Ryan and being able to lead Ryan, which is ultimately what I should be doing, right, in the right direction, is really connecting.
Yeah.
When I'm able to connect with you, I can understand you. When I'm able to understand with you, there's that harmony that we can do things together. Mm-hmm. And in that builds trust.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I now trust you. And that dance becomes even more sacred.
Yeah.
That music that we can play, that unity is the word, I guess.
Yeah.
I say sacred dance, but really it's unity. It's we're unified and we're in one accord with what we want to do.
I know what you're saying with the sacred too, because it's a dance of the soul.
Yeah.
It's showing up. It's bringing your soul to work as a leader, and that empathy allows for there to be, there's a power in that for leadership.
Yeah.
Effective leadership requires empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about am I accomplishing goals, because that means you're a great goal setter and you're great at getting shit done.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't mean you're a great leader. Yeah. Just because you get shit done and just because you can force people to help you into getting things done does not mean you're a great leader.
Yeah.
And it does not mean you're an effective leader either. And I think we reward that type of behavior because it gets to the goal, and sometimes gets to the goal faster.
Right.
There's collateral damage along the way where people have fear for their job. They're afraid of being vulnerable. They don't trust the leadership or management within the organization. And so there's all these conflicting ideas, but you're getting somewhere, you're accomplishing. But we have to remember, not everything that grows is healthy.
Yeah.
Cancer grows.
Yeah.
Right. So just because your business is growing doesn't mean it's a healthy environment. And I would say this, that empathy allows for there to be a leadership culture where we're becoming better before we get bigger.
Yeah.
Because one of the risks of a growing organization, I learned this from Scott Moorhead, our partner. He said that the risk of a growing organization is losing what makes you special when you first started.
Yeah.
And that early feeling that you get in a business when it's early on and people are just together in it, and it's dirty and it's grimy and people are putting extra time in, and there's empathy all wrapped up into that. But as the business grows, what do we hear? It feels less like a family.
Yeah.
What's going on? Right? Because there's less connection, and it becomes more and more vital for effective leaders to recognize that empathy is that foundation that allows for, like we talk about, the feeling to grow of trust.
Right.
When we're being asked, how do you grow trust in the organization? We talk about accountability and we talk about empathy, because when we have empathy, when we have leaders that have empathy, to your point, it builds trust.
Yeah.
It builds that understanding.
Yeah. And that trust takes you somewhere as well.
Yeah.
I think of it this way. You made a statement that reminded me of my wife, Amber, because she's when it comes to work is work.
Yeah.
And life is life. Like, she keeps everything separate and she doesn't do a lot of extra activities. Now she's grown a connection with some people within her workplace, but she's very guarded, when it comes to after hours activities, like she don't drink around her people that she lead, like she doesn't, display a lifestyle within that group. Like,
sure.
Like, she really, for me, I'm just George. Once the lights, once the clock goes out, you're gonna get the real George, right?
Yeah.
And so we have two different ways that we display our lifestyle, but she's very guarded in the sense of her leadership and also how she connects to her leader. Like, she has a wall, and some of it is hurt. Some of it is that she's been scarred deeply by somebody she's trusted within the workplace.
Yeah.
And so that's really tightened up her
Right.
circle.
Yeah.
Now she doesn't say, "Hey, get the hell away from me,"
Yeah.
can't get in here. But she's very, she's uses a different level of discernment, is what I like to say.
Well, yeah.
To how she allows it to approach. And I share that story because the lack of empathy and the damage that it does do for those leaders who do not display that vulnerability and trust within their organization, to where they create that sense of belonging and they create that connection with their team.
Yeah.
It shows that they care more than just a paycheck, as we always talk about, but really displaying the impact and the game changer that empathetic leadership does display, especially in the time and the world that we live in today. When we talk about some of these things, and I want to get into this as we talk about the power of empathy and leadership, and the referencing the increasing complexities of the workplace, right? We talked about that a little bit, those dynamics and the need for strong leadership.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when we talk about this, it's the building of trust is interesting, because now we know neuroscience is teaching us that the act of leaders practicing empathy and doing the scan on the brain during times of empathy being used, it actually lights up the parts of the brain that we see the underpinnings of trust and relationship building. And so there's a really powerful idea where where connection, when we see strong, authentic connection happening, and those parts of the brain that light up during connection also light up during moments where empathy is being displayed. So we know that empathy is scientifically directly linked to trust and connection.
Yeah.
So when we think about, well, that, to your point, when we first kicked off this conversation, well, that's just the soft stuff. Well, then connection's soft.
Yeah.
Right. Then trust is soft. And when we think about it that way, and we kind of deny the realities of human experience within the workplace, and people become less of a human when they come to work, they become less of an individual. There's no freedom of expression. There's no ability to show up in vulnerable ways. I mean, when you think about leaders practicing vulnerability and telling their story and sharing those vulnerable realities of their own life. When I shared my story, when I first got hired into TCC, the first new hire class that we had, I remember standing up in front of 60 of them. We would fly everybody into Marion, Indiana. Every single person that got hired in
Marion has an airport?
Yeah. Well, we would fly them into Indy. And then,
okay. I was going to say, I don't know if I want to land. Anyway, I don't know if I want to drive.
There is an airport there. There is an airport there. But I remember that first new hire class. I'm coming out from being a full-time pastor, and then I'm standing up in front of 60 of these young people that just got hired into this company. And I start telling my story. And I'm like telling the story about when I'm 6 years old, my dad's a heroin addict. My mom was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenia, and I'm sharing this very, very, very vulnerable, deep story. I had no context for business. I didn't know that there was, you can't let people see a sweat, Yeah. And so I got up in front and just displayed vulnerability, as I had done in the church world for so long. And people were crying, man. I mean, after the new hire class, we were hugging each other, and like, there was this moment, and I'm not saying that work always has to be crying and hugging and kumbaya and sitting around a campfire, but God, like we do feel, and we talk about it all the time, that culture is how most people feel, believe, and behave. And it goes in sequence that way. We can't talk about trust unless we're building trust. And how do you build trust? You don't build it, you foster it, you grow it. It's not block upon block. It's planting the seed, it's watering it. It takes time.
Yeah.
It's not manufactured. It's organic. It's the relationship that we have between you and I. It takes time to build that trust.
Yeah.
It just does. It's just not an automatic thing. And I think when we think about the science behind empathy, it drives engagement. Empathy drives engagement, not cool programming.
Right.
Empathy, leaders practicing empathy, being examples of what empathy. And I think, where do we start with all of this? Like, how do we start to approach building an empathetic leadership culture, right? Like, how do we start to foster, again, back to my point, I keep saying building, but really it's not building, it's cultivating. That's the word. It's like, it's farming.
Yeah.
It's really planting those seeds and watering them and fostering that, cultivating the type of environment and the type of culture that we want to have within the organization. Nobody wants to work for a leader that doesn't display empathy.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. And because we know that we don't want that, by the very nature of our understanding, we should start to ask ourselves, am I displaying, how empathetic am I as a leader?
Mm-hmm.
Am I pressing into this? So I think it'd be really good to kind of press into some of those things, but I do have a quick segment. Are you ready for this?
Oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. Champion Your Culture, the podcast, sponsored by Culture Good.
Crazy
segment that Ryan has. This is the craziest.
All right, so I guess it's that.
That's what it is.
All right,
here we go.
So I'm pulling this up here. All right, so this happened just a few days ago, October 11th. This was posted. All right, Muncie, Indiana. Which, if you've never been to Muncie, Indiana before, it's a city for sure, and it's in Indiana. And so Muncie, Indiana, police claim a Muncie woman didn't know what the big deal was about stealing a Kia from a car dealership in order to allow her to drive to Indianapolis for a job interview to be an exotic dancer. According to court documents, 20-year-old, I'm not going to say her name, acted like this whole thing was a joke and did not understand what she was going to be arrested for after police tracked her down and questioned her about the stolen car. So we've got a stolen car out of Muncie, Indiana, to drive down to Indianapolis for a job interview. It's a job interview.
I don't see anything wrong with the situation so far.
All right. Well, let's keep going then.
I mean, Kia is not the hardest car to break into. I believe you can now use your phone, the iPhone. If you have an iPhone, you can get inside of a Kia now.
Yeah, but she just went to a car dealership.
Yeah.
And test drove it to Indy.
Yes, that's a good test drive.
Yeah. You really know what you want the car. And then she decided after the interview,
she didn't want it.
Right, because she probably didn't do a good interview, wasn't going to get paid.
Yeah.
That's a move though. So you steal the car, go to the interview.
Don't use your gas.
If you get the job,
buy the car.
And then nobody's out anything. All right.
If she needs a lawyer, I'll sign up. I don't have my paperwork.
Man, I don't know, man. Maybe that's not the craziest shit in HR after all.
I mean, it's funny. I mean, I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to make chicken salad out of chicken poop right now.
Chicken shit, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was trying to give the PG version as we have a PG-13 segment.
Oh, dude.
But it's sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
You know what? One thing you know about people, we are very resourceful.
Yeah.
And we will figure shit out.
Yeah.
I mean, we will. We'll at the end of the day, if I need to get somewhere, I'll get somewhere.
Let's just say she's not going to pass a background check.
No. Well,
not anymore.
Well,
I mean, that's a pen and case, so it ain't going to show.
They didn't even have her information. The only reason they knew who she was is she applied. There's this.
Oh, that's the other part. Finish it.
Well, she applied to get a car about 30 days before that. So they just had her information in the dealership.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's where she went back.
That may be a crazy shit, but it also may be a come on, man.
All right, I'm going to give it a come on, man. That's a come on, man.
That's a come on, man. So you premeditated, like in your mind. I'm trying to make sense of this.
Mm-hmm.
She's been empathetic. She's getting a job, responsibilities.
You're trying to
get a car.
Trying to make sense of this. Oh, you're bringing empathy to this.
Yeah, I'm bringing. I'm tying it into.
You're trying to be empathetic about her situation.
She is applying for a car. She's needing money.
Yeah.
She's applying for a car. She's got applications out there. She gets a call back to say, "Hey, you have an interview here in Indianapolis at Exotic Dancing."
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you got to do something strange for a piece of change.
Right.
She's getting a job.
I'm not an exotic dancer.
I mean, I'm
but
not
$20 is
dancing.
$20.
Yeah. And so, she gets a job interview.
Yeah.
She ain't got a car yet.
Yeah. Right.
She ain't got a job to pay for the car.
I get it.
So, hey, let me go test drive.
Right.
Test drive this car. In my mind, I'm thinking, all right, I can have this car back by such and such time.
Yeah.
Now, what you probably didn't realize is that the guy took a little bit too long to get all the paperwork done for her to test drive.
So she had to roll out because she's going to be late for the interview. She's going to be late for the interview.
She's been responsible.
Okay, I got you. It's a stretch, but, we can get there.
You think the judge would give her a break?
No.
No?
Well, I don't. Well, are you the attorney?
No, I'm not going to do this case.
I was going to say she's going to go straight to
I think I will laugh. Just think about this.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
No, there's no amount of empathy that I'm honestly though, you got to, there have been moments in my life. I mean, that is some practice that you start to look at as an empathetic leader, as a joke, but also in real time. When we think about when people are going through things, we recognize that she didn't just wake up that day and say, I'm just going to do this because I don't give a shit. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a whole lot leading up to that moment.
Yeah.
And so empathy to me, where I've seen it practically lived out is very much in the example of sharing my story in the new hire class, because the moment that I did that, the vulnerability in that moment opened up the opportunity for others to join me in that. It gives permission for people when you're a leader that practices empathy. And this is really as I was talking about, I think, we've listed out really 6 things that you can start to implement within your own leadership practices so that you can start to build a more empathetic leadership environment, not just for yourself, for your team, so that they can live that out as well. To your point with Amber, difficult to trust coworkers and so forth because of experiences where trust was broken. Mm-hmm. Right. Listen, at the end of the day, we're relational beings. We're, it's difficult to be hurt in a relationship and then go back into one and not have trust issues.
Yeah.
And so even beyond that, just the feeling of everyday connection, fulfillment, satisfaction, the authenticity behind that. So I think, when we think about where does all of this begin, it starts with that self-awareness.
Yeah.
It starts by asking the question, how empathetic am I as a leader? Right? That first step toward change, if we do need to change our leadership style or whatever we want to call it, and we want to become more of an empathetic leader, we have to start looking at our leadership practices, our behavior, right? We have to start saying, how empathetic is my leadership? And am I known for that? Yeah. Right? Not in the sense of I don't get shit done.
Yeah.
And not that I don't have goals, and not that sometimes work isn't difficult. It's not that we just have feeling circles all day long and we're not getting anything accomplished, right? But if I'm showing up in an empathetic way and I'm beginning to be self-aware of that, the more self-aware I am as a leader, the better I am at leading myself.
Yeah.
Because I can only lead who I know well.
Yeah.
And if I know myself well, and if I know whether I'm being empathetic or not, then I'm able to then say, all right, are we building this as a culture? And do I see empathy as something throughout my team? Do I see empathy being a trait of my team? When I think of my team, do I see empathy as one of the behaviors observably, right?
Yeah.
Because then we know that that's what we're actually building.
Yeah.
Because we see it. We have to feel it, but eventually whatever you feel is going to be seen.
Yes. So then we're talking about what we always talk about, the culture.
Yeah.
The impact of the culture. One of the things that I realize when we talk about culture and what does this mean, right? When we have empathy, when we show empathy and we display that within our leadership,
Yeah.
right? Not just as a characteristic. It's truly a lifestyle. It's not what you do, it's who you are.
Yeah.
Right. That's the importance of it. You don't you don't do empathy.
Yeah.
You live empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it first starts, as you said, all things leadership is a reflection of self-leadership.
Right.
It starts with you. It starts with us leading ourselves and showing empathy. We talk about showing love, grace, and trust to ourselves, what we believe leadership is truly defined as, right? And as we're influencing others, leading others and impacting others, we do so not because it's some check the box of this is what leadership is and these are the laws of leadership. It is the life of a leader, right?
This is not the laws of leadership. It's a life of a leader.
It's who you are. It's part of what's inside of you that eventually will come out of you, right?
Yeah.
We always say hurt people, but then heal people, right?
Yeah.
People of empathy display empathy towards others.
Yeah.
They show that grace, they show that love. And in doing so, this is how George makes Ryan feel. And how Ryan then feels is how he then believes, and what Ryan believes is how he behaves. That is what culture is.
Yeah.
Right. It's the behavior, it's the outcome of how you feel and believe based on the leadership. Right. And so when we display those things, we say, how does this impact our culture? I got some fun facts about culture.
Awesome.
Right. People who feel comfortable within the workplace. If I say, Ryan, you know what? The following is true.
Yeah.
100% of the people that said, I am happy in my current position, right? With no plans to leave. There's so many things that derives from this.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love is that they're 3 times more likely to say that their leader impacts their performance. The things that the leader does for them. The leader creates that sense of belonging. They connect with them. They show the empathy, right? So those leaders who are showing empathy impacts performance in a positive way.
Well, I heard a stat that empathetic leader is the creates a 20% increase in workplace productivity.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah.
You know,
so just having that empathy. And so you say, what's the whole point of this empathy and all these different characteristics? We're not saying characteristics. We're saying good leadership, people who care about their people, care about themselves, trust themselves, love themselves, show empathy within, and also displays that within their team. That impacts the culture. And when you have positive culture, healthy culture, if you don't have healthy culture or you question your workplace culture, you can go to culturegood.com and try out the diagnostic tool. That was a cheap plug there, but it is really fun. Free tool for you to use on the website. Tool, and we'll pop that up on the screen here in a little bit. But when your company has a positive impact on your performance, you said, George, what's the outcome of a leader who leads with empathy? 3 times more likely to have a functional culture.
Yeah.
And that functional culture then impacts the performance of their employees.
Absolutely.
If you want to see a positive impact, if you want to say, hey, we want to get stuff done in this place, it's through good leadership. It's through healthy leadership.
Yeah.
Right.
What does that look like in terms of, like, for those that are listening and those that are watching us live right now, what in a practical way though? Because we can talk about empathy in terms of the concept, and I think we are giving some examples of what happens when we don't display empathy. There's a lack of trust, and when we do display empathy as a leader, it's more effective, and there's a greater level of trust, greater level of vulnerability. But what do we do with that? What do we do with our sense? Like, we know that it benefits. All right. We know that there's good outcomes because of empathetic leadership. But how do I know, if I'm a listener right now, how do I know whether I'm becoming more empathetic or not? You see what I'm saying? Because do I know it because I feel more, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, what is it practically that tells me I'm an empathetic leader?
It's good.
You know what I'm saying?
I think
because if we don't hit that, then this is just all concept and theory stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, how do I start to take practical steps toward being more empathetic?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that piece of it is the piece that needs to be, like, really solid, because in order for there to be the outcomes that you're talking about, And we have to know where empathy comes from. We have to know where it originates from. What are the steps that I can start to take as a leader that moves me, moves my team, the organization in the direction of having empathetic leadership. And I think, for me, it starts with that self-awareness. It starts with self-reflection. It starts with that question that I keep going back to, and that is, how empathetic am I being? And I think that's a great question, not only to ask of yourself, but also people that are really close to you.
Yeah.
I might think I'm empathetic, but Katara may, say, nah, you're more of an asshole.
Yeah. I mean, it's, some people say
she wouldn't say that.
Maybe. Could it be complex? Could it be a complex, human trait for people to say, this is very complex for me to show empathy because I don't know what it is?
Well, it is complex and it's challenging, but that doesn't mean that it's.
So I think that's where the vulnerability, we talk about having a true relationship of trust, right?
Yeah.
We talk about the importance in the workplace of having that vulnerability of communication on both sides of the table.
Yeah.
Right. The question is, Ryan, as my leader, does he understand how he makes me feel on this side of the table?
Yeah.
Like, what is it like to be on the other side of the table as a leader and talk the way you talk and lead the way you lead? Right. And so for you to understand whether or not your impact of empathy or any other lifestyle principle that you're living, grace, that you want to show trust, in order for you to know that, you got to be able to open up your mouth and say, George, I need you to be honest.
It's hard.
But also take the constructive criticism. But we don't have those conversations.
No, like,
we don't have it.
No, here's a question. And let's just do it right here live. And it's not perfect, right?
Yeah.
My leadership isn't perfect. George, how does my leadership make you feel?
It makes me feel, from an individual perspective, I would say your leadership makes me feel vulnerable. It makes me feel patient because of your style. I have to be patient with how you do things. Because we're similar in a little ways. We will shut down and or we'll go into our little coffee shop and forget the world, and we need that time. And then I think the third thing that it makes me feel, and it's a stupid word, I don't know if anybody's going to understand it, but it makes me feel okay. And this is what I mean by that. It's okay for me to realize that I need self-care, or I need alone time. Why do I feel that it's okay to do that? Because Ryan displays that. I see that from Ryan. I see that it's okay for him to do what's best for him. I feel like it's okay for Ryan and for me to say, all right, this is what's best for my family right now. And I need to stay home with Dexter. Why do I feel that way? Because Ryan feels that way. He displays those things. Why does Ryan feel that way? Does Scott do those things? Is there a vulnerability there where, hey, get your job done, yes, but family is first. That's part of what Round Room is. That's one thing that we haven't lost is we've grown in 43 states across all the multiple businesses, right? 4 or 5 businesses within this entity here. But it's okay. Whatever that okay is for George, it's okay.
That's great.
And because of that, we're able to communicate that. So I can say, is that trust? Yes. Is there grace? Yes, because maybe the day that I need my alone time, like, you got to show me grace because I needed to get a job done and I didn't complete a task. But hey, this is why I didn't complete the task. Mentally, I was just out of it. I would have not been any benefit to you or this company in a positive way. In your way in that. So those are things that your leadership makes me feel. Having that conversation with your team is a vulnerable thing to do because you can say your leadership makes me feel like I'm the worst person ever.
Confused,
right?
Or like,
it just depends on that type of
lack
leader,
of
right?
clarity and
uncertainty,
and that person. Like, as a leader, we have to recognize that we can't all the time please everybody. But I think starting from a place of being able to talk about feeling and feeling with people again, like, as a leader, to your point, taking constructive criticism or even criticism, it's not something that's happening against you, but saying, I'm going to feel this with that person. And maybe I do need to take a step back and look at my own leadership and say, how am I practicing empathy? Practicing empathy, right? Not perfecting empathy, practicing empathy. And that means being able as a leader to have those feeling conversations. And that self-awareness and that self-reflection and having emotional intelligence. I would encourage, those that are listening, those that are with us, like if you're looking at leadership development within your organization, our team and a big part of what we look at is the emotional and the feeling side of the culture piece of it, where we understand that there is no leadership without leaders feeling connected and feeling engaged themselves, feeling inspired themselves, right? And so many times we're trying to build this leadership concept out of something that doesn't already exist. And so what we have to understand is that what we're building with what's available to us. And so at Culture of Good, we want to provide more tools and tactics for your leaders to connect in more deeper ways, right? Because that authenticity is part of what we want to see as a success criteria, is like, we want to see authentic connection. That only happens through empathetic leadership. Right. And it's not, empathetic leadership isn't, again, what it's not is going around saying, all right, just there's no guidelines, there's no criteria that we have to live by. There's, there's nothing that we have to consider along the way, and boundaries that we have to follow, or, guides. We have our values, we have our mission, we have our purpose. But as we're going toward the goals that we have, it's going to be that empathetic leadership that creates effectiveness, because it's within empathy that we build trust. It's within empathy that we build connection. When we talk about connection, we can't just say, hey, we got to communicate better. We have to communicate in ways that display empathy and provide examples of that. Lead by example, like demonstrate empathy in your actions and interactions, right? Like, are you practicing active listening? Are you showing that vulnerability when it's appropriate? Right? Are you being open in acknowledging people's feelings and concerns of the team? I've heard leaders say, you know what, tough, this is what we're doing. And the team has all these have you ever been in that, where like the team has concerns and the leader comes in, they do the meeting and everybody keeps their mouth shut. And we go through the meeting, the decision's made. The leader says, listen, I don't want to just make this about me and my decision, but this is what I think is best. What do you guys think? And everybody just goes along with it. Then the leader walks out of the door and everybody starts talking.
I would say that I probably have some employees like that on my team. Like that. But for me, the question is, how do we end that? Right. So understanding this, the difference between empathy, because I think when people say empathy, they think they think sympathy. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy, right? There's that empathy is the understanding, as we're talking about. I choose to, and I desire to understand you, right? To be more effective. There's three types of empathy that kind of pointed out when I was kind of digging into this. There's effective empathy. That is the ability to respond, be effective. You understand where George's is, depending on my emotion, your effective empathy, right? So the ability to respond to another person's emotions appropriately. There's a somatic empathy. This is the ability to feel what another person is feeling. I always use the F3, right? Feel, felt, found. So my ability to understand that, hey, Ryan's going through something. Ryan, you know what? I may not understand how you feel, but I understand from this perspective. I may not be able to personally understand your feeling, but this is how I felt when I went through something similar. And this is what I found, right? And so feel, felt, found. I don't understand how you feel, but this is what I felt. And this is what I found. And so having that somatic empathy, and then the cognitive empathy is the ability to understand someone response to a situation. All right, I understand your response. I choose to understand the response, and that's understanding, hey, how do we get on the same page, right? Maybe in the same book. And sometimes there's an understanding that, hey, we're going to have to agree to disagree. Now, that doesn't mean that there has to be a wall between us. it's just, we're human. We're not going to agree on everything. There's a ton of things that you do or believe that I may not agree with, right?
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
We all have differences, but having true empathy, not sympathy, right? That empathy says, I choose to understand you. I do understand. Part of me understanding you is shutting my mouth and allowing you to communicate your feelings, right?
Yeah.
And having
the
that,
concerns
right?
that the team might have.
Yeah, the sympathy part of it, so you can separate the two, is that pity. That's that emotional feeling.
Hey, I've got a picture for that,
Right.
a metaphor. So the difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is you see someone off the side of the boat and they're in the water, and you throw a life preserver to them.
Yeah.
Because you feel for them.
Right.
Empathy is jumping into the water with the person. It's recognizing that it's not keeping yourself at a distance and saying, well, I feel bad for that person, but this is just the way it is. Right.
Right.
Or, Brene Brown talks about a lot, like, when you see somebody going through a difficult time, you're like, well, at least you have a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At least you have a paycheck. That at least conversation. It really, as we're going through difficult times and also great times, right? Empathy also brings us to a place where we celebrate each other.
Right.
Because I want to feel with you. Right. So we cry with those who cry. We rejoice with those who rejoice.
Yeah.
Right. That kind of concept where we hurt with those who hurt. We celebrate the moments of celebration. In other words, we're doing life with people.
Yeah.
A leadership that I learned in the world of the nonprofit space and just doing good together. It kind of had that feeling, like, how do we dwell together? How do we do life together? How do we know our mission collectively? How do we see the vision, clearly? And then how do we practice our leadership practically, so that we can get to, not only get to where we're going, but when we get there, we still like each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
true. There's a question in the chat I want to get to because it's interesting. It's DEI related.
Okay.
And I'm gonna throw it up on here because Matt said this: in today's era of DEI, do you feel that being empathetic opens the door for potential issues in violating DEI? He said he just took the class and warned him about being empathetic that could cause issues. Do you want to hit on this at all?
We've got like a few minutes and you're going to bring up the DEI conversation. I think the whole programming of DEI is harmful.
Yeah.
So, I think this could be a future episode. But I think programming DEI in itself, the reason that empathy might be harmful in a program DEI is because the DEI program is harmful to begin with, and empathy allows for those deep, vulnerable conversations, and most companies don't want those.
Yeah.
Most companies don't want to know what people are really feeling. And I'm not suggesting that this is that case, but certainly I think when we talk about empathy, we have to understand that we're setting the example in appropriate situations, right? In appropriate ways. So again, practicing empathy is effective leadership. Effective leadership is going to look at, all right, if these are the programs that we have to uphold within the organization in order for us to be considered leaders, then maybe the appropriateness of empathy might be lessened by the program that we're trying to push.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Right.
And so the levels of appropriateness in terms of empathy, when we give people the opportunity to share their feelings and share their concerns and to feel about this, so I think we're losing the video here.
Yep. So when I think about this question, and as you work on that, I think the important thing to understand is Ryan said on the program, strategy and not programs when it comes to those things. So having a effective strategy, not a program. We talk about the difference between the program and the strategy. I think is important, and I think you hit it, right on the head, Ryan, as you were explaining it. And we understand the difference between those things. I think it's important to also know that we understand people. And we talk about being empathetic. This is what I think it comes out to. And I'll just share these 4 things that I wrote down on my notes.
Is this still along with the DEI piece?
I think it ties into it. I think it ties into just in general, like these are key 4 just basic things. When we talk about D&I, especially on the diversity and the inclusion part of it, right? That's really the impact that empathy really impacts the most. It's the people part of things and making sure everybody's included. When you're empathetic towards people, how does it impact D&I? Because I choose to understand you, I think I'm including you, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a balance there. I think when I think of 4 key strategies when it comes to empathy that we as leaders can display, we can impact others. How do we become more empathetic leaders? How do we grow that? I think 1, active listening and observing, right? We talk about observable behaviors. We talk about, actively practicing active listening to where we're listening to our people. I think the more the company listens to their people and they give that full attention to their people, they're choosing to understand their people, be able to not necessarily speak their language, because one thing you don't want to do is become something that you're truly not, right? I think that's the difference between, hey, I'm going to start dressing like George so I can be more relatable to George. No, be who you are, but understand George. Understand George's story, right? Creating that trust and that relationship and have that genuine interest in their culture. And by culture, I mean, where did George come from? Having a genuine interest of, why does George think that way? The only way I can understand how George thinks that way if I can actively listen and observe and understand his story, right? So that's through their words and their emotions, right? I know Ryan for who he is because I listen to Ryan, but I also see the emotion of certain words that really impact Ryan, right?
So you're looking at body language,
right? Looking at those things. The second one, seek to understand. Don't seek to be heard, don't seek to speak, don't seek to respond, but putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So when we talk about D&I, right, if you want to have a more diverse and inclusive culture within your workplace, you got to be able to seek to understand. You got to be able to seek to include and bring that value to people, right? And have it in such a way that you understand that, hey, I'm by acknowledging you and your feelings, by validating what you're expressing and experiencing, right? I choose to bring that in. I choose to receive that as a leader to learn from. The best leaders are those who listen and learn and adapt, right? I chose to listen to Ryan. I chose to learn where Ryan was coming from, where Ryan wants to go. And this is how I'm able to adapt my leadership style to Ryan. Because how I lead Ryan is how I lead Jared or Matt, right? And so seeking to understand. The third thing is show compassion and support, right? What does Ryan, how does Ryan make me feel? Those 3 things that I shared comes through a lot of compassion, right? Empathy is a fruit of compassion. I choose to show compassion and support, expressing that empathy by offering that support to your team, right? Not just to some people, not just to your favorite people. When we talk about D&I and the impact that happens, the D&I happens and the impact of empathy, empathetic leadership, that difference is because you choose to segregate how you show empathy and who you show empathy to. Empathetic leadership can't have favoritism. Oh, you choose to show, George, empathy, but you're hard and rough on Sarah here or Jake and Michael here. You're different than what you are to these people. So there can be that separation of who you show and display that to. That's why it's important to be all things to all people. Like, be who you are. If it's in you, that's the type of leader you are. That's part of who you are. There's no favoritism. It's just what you do, right? There's never been a day in my life where I feel like you show somebody something that you never showed me. You're just Ryan, right? That's just who you are, whether that's the good, bad, and the ugly. That's just who you are. So showing that compassion and that support to your team is so important to be able to do. The fourth thing, you hit on this earlier on in the show, is practicing that emotional intelligence. Developing that emotional intelligence by being aware of your own emotions first. As you said, it starts with our own emotions and then how we also impact others. Those are the 4. Number 1, I'll recap them again. Active listening and observe. Seek to understand is number 2. Number 3, show compassion and support. And then number 4, practice emotional intelligence. Cultivate that self-awareness. Be able to establish those things are important. How does that affect D&I? Listen, if you are who you are, it doesn't matter. It's going to affect people. Like we talk about the effect and the impact of D&I, and I think sometimes organizations and companies, you'll bring those words up as programs. And if you know me personally, I despise programs with workplaces. If you want it to be something that is part of who you are, it should be a strategy. We have sales strategies, we create business strategies. We don't have culture strategies, but we want our culture to be good. We have marketing strategies, and things are great. If you want a program, that's going to be seasonal. Yeah. But if you want DEI to be a part of the standard of who you are and what you do, it is a DEI strategy. It's part of the impact of our culture, marketing, and business and sales, right? If you have a DEI program, don't talk to me. Or call me.
Well, yeah, talk to me.
Let's talk about the difference between your programs and your strategies. I'm off my rant. Sorry.
All right.
I got passionate about it.
All right, man. Well, that's it. Well, we thank you all for joining us on Champion Your Culture today. Great segment. I think getting into the DEI conversation, I appreciate that being brought up, and we haven't talked about it for several months. I think it might be some good time to jump back into that conversation. So check us out over the next few weeks. As always, we want to make sure that you subscribe, share, let us know if you want to get involved in Culture of Good, become a culture champion. We have that available for you as well at cultureofgood.com. Anything else, George?
No, I think that's all, my friend. I think that's all. Cool. Another great segment. It's good to be with you.
Yeah.
Hey, show the world a little empathy, show each other a little love, and grace and trust this week. Until next time,
we will see you back here on Champion Your Culture.
Hi, friends. Thanks for joining us on Champion Your Culture podcast today.
We're so excited that you're here and want to invite you to connect with us. You can watch the show weekly on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn, and listen anywhere you get podcasts.
Subscribe today to get new relevant content each week on how to champion yourself and your team. Thanks again for listening to Champion Your Culture.